Prediction in politics is a dangerous game. If you get it right, you can claim to be a sage. If you get it wrong, you get egg on your face. And someone who took that risk before the American presidential election was former Tory leadership candidate Rory Stewart. To his credit, he didn't hedge his bets, right? He was very explicit, somewhat brave, you could say. He tweeted this in response to a clip where Andrew Neil was saying how close it was. He said, "Journalists would like the US race to seem as close as possible. It suits their appetite for suspense and Andrew Neil's desire to prod the establishment. But this won't be a close race decided by a couple of thousand votes. He is wrong and Kamala will win." So he's saying Kamala's going to win and it's not going to be close. And he gives his explanation because Biden's government has been solid. Trump's lost ground since 2016. The young black male vote, which Trump needs, didn't turn out in 16, 18, 20, or 22. Young women like Kamala plus vote. The polls are herding at 50-50 to protect themselves after past misses ignore. The one thing he might have got right was the claim to ignore the polls, but he obviously got it in the wrong direction. As you already know, in fact, Trump not only won the Electoral College, but won the popular vote, and the Republicans have won the Senate. So Rory Stewart couldn't really have been any more wrong. And after the results came in, Stewart explained why he'd got it so wrong.
I got it totally wrong. I thought Kamala Harris would win, and I believed she would win comfortably. I thought it would be over quite quickly. Despite the polls showing 50-50. Why? Well, I can repeat my arguments. They were technical arguments about young African-American voters and how they would turn out, her ground game, the money, the performance of Biden's administration. It's all turned out to be wrong, completely wrong. I don't think, though, that I was fundamentally wrong because I'm patronizing towards people. I never felt that. I never felt that as a politician in Britain. I didn't feel I was patronizing towards my Brexit voting constituents. I think I was wrong because I'm an optimist. And I hate the idea of being right pessimistically. I think you can be a false prophet and right. You can align yourself with the worst instincts of humanity. You can assume that everything's going to hell in a handbasket, or you can hope. And my bet on Kamala Harris was a bet on the American people. It was a bet on liberal democracy. It was a bet against populism, and it was a bet on hope.
So are we wrong to think that that can work? That's the really difficult thing that this sort of confronts us with.
Well, it's so difficult because, of course, I felt in a very minor way, in Britain, seeing Boris Johnson take over, this just proves everything that I feared, that the bad people win, populism triumphs. And I've spent a long time trying to pull myself together and see moments of light and inspiration. You've just written a book inspiring young people to get involved in politics. We have to believe that the Middle East peace process can still be solved, the two-state solution is possible, that peace can come back to the world, and that the world can get back onto a better trajectory. But tonight is a very, very devastating body blow. This is 25% of the global economy. This is the world's largest, oldest, most mature democracy that has just voted for a multiple convicted felon.
As I say, I don't want to diss the guy too badly because he did come out and make a strong prediction. I sat on the fence. When Aaron pushed me last night, actually, I did say I thought Trump was going to win, but I didn't tweet that because I didn't want to get owned afterwards. So credit for, I suppose, putting his neck out there. But Dahlia, he was very wrong, wasn't he? And what did you make of his explanation for how he got it wrong? Do you think it makes sense that he was just too hopeful?
I mean, I have no problem with people making predictions and those predictions turning out to be wrong, right? It's not, doesn't disqualify you from being a political analyst. But the question is, what does qualify you for being a political analyst? What does qualify you for being a political pundit in this moment, for being someone who comments on politics? Because what struck me there is his reasons for why he made the prediction that he gave had nothing to do with politics. It had nothing to do with this question, with a structural view of the state of politics and economics in this moment. It had nothing to do with looking at how have things panned out over the past 10 years. What is the overall direction that this world is going in? I mean, how many times, and this doesn't just go for Rory Stewart, it goes for the entire political chattering class. How many times you have to be proved spectacularly wrong? How many times you have to show yourself to be completely deficient of a political analysis that can structurally hold the moment that we're in before someone stands up and says, maybe you're not qualified to be narrativizing this particular historical moment. If someone else in their job screwed up this spectacularly this many times, I'm not just talking about Rory Stewart, I'm talking about the broader pundit class in this country. How many times could you do that without someone firing you? I mean, how do we fire these guys? Because clearly, if their job is meant to be political analysis and political insight, they have failed on multiple occasions because the data that they look at, the lens that they look at, is through these like either these general feelings of how they think the world should be, or their general sense of whether or not people are good or bad, or these kinds of micro trends that they're observing in like the month leading up to the election. You know, when he listed out why he thinks Kamala Harris is going to win, it was all things that he had identified as if he just tuned in like 3 weeks ago into this thing called American politics or this thing called global politics. Whereas when you have a political framework and a long structural view of the world, and you look at things like patterns, and you look at this question of, if people, again, are in this sense of living in a moment of overlapping crisis, and one party is saying, everything's fine, I'm laughing, I'm swinging my hair around, I'm having a great time, I've got all the celebrities with me, and the other party is giving you a vacuous sense or a vague sense, but nonetheless a strong sense of departure from that norm, then maybe there's a chance that, given that this has routinely happened, whether it's Brexit, Boris Johnson, the first election of Donald Trump, this keeps happening. How could you still use the same framework and the same data and the same approach to look at the world when your approach is clearly failing?